The head, it hurts, it seems to be split. Chubai opened his eyes, and what he saw was an unfamiliar scene, the white ceiling, the spacious room. Not far away, a piece of white wax was burning on the wooden table, and the swaying firelight illuminated the surroundings. Where is this? Chubai supported his body with his hands and sat up from the bed. There was chaos in his head, and bursts of pain continued to come, as if he was smashed by a hammer. Before Chubai could continue to think, the memory like a tide surged up in an instant. After a while, Chubai sat on the bed blankly. I crossed it. The former owner of this body is a teenager named Karen Campbell. He lives in a world called Lost Continent. The style is similar to that of the European Middle Ages, but in contrast, it is full of fantasy. Originally, Karen was just an orphan boy living in Beacon Town. It wasn't until half a year ago that the Northern Wind City and the Thunder Kingdom went to war, and Amos, the only heir to the Lord of the North Wind, died in battle, and a cavalry suddenly came to Lighthouse Town and took Karen to the North Wind City and told him that the Lord of the North Wind was illegitimate. At the same time as his identity, he was prefixed with Camel's surname. Since then, the orphan Karen has become the young master of Baifeng City, bidding farewell to the life of lack of food and clothing. However, for Karen, this does not mean the beginning of a good life. Oh! Unexpectedly, it failed. Chubai sat on the bed, not rushing to sort out the chaotic memories in his mind. The scene before the crossing appeared in front of him. The amazing explosion and the flames rising into the sky made him feel lingering. The hard work of several generations was ultimately destroyed. Chubai shook his head in sorrow. He was originally a top scientific researcher living in Ciebla Star, but due to an important experimental project, an accident occurred in the process and caused a large explosion in the laboratory. Chubai was also killed. Huang Chuan. The only good thing is that his soul has unexpectedly become Karen. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Karen just raised her head, the door has been pushed open, and a sweet-looking girl in a linen skirt walked in. Daisy. Karen's name came to mind. The girl named Daisy, about 15 years old, has a slender and soft figure, and her slightly immature face reveals the innocence of a girl. She holds a silver tray with both hands, which is filled with hot soup. You are here. Seeing the beautiful maid Daisy, Karen couldn't help feeling her heart beating faster under the influence of the memory left by the body's former owner, and a hint of redness appeared on her face, and she spoke nervously. Are you okay? Master Karen. Daisy walked to the bed, put the tray on the table first, looked at Karen with watery eyes, bit her lip and said, "It's all my fault that made you like this." "No, it's okay," Karen whispered. Immediately afterwards, Daisy frowned, with a slight irritation, and said, "However, Master Taylor is also too much. He is also a member of the Campbell family. How could he treat you so cruelly?" Taylor? Hearing this name, Karen frowned instinctively, and an angry mood surged in her heart. Like herself, Taylor is also a member of the Campbell family, but he is the cousin and nephew of Lord Northern Wind. Karen died because of this Taylor. The course of the matter is not complicated. The North Wind City is located in the northern part of the Silver Star Kingdom. In order to defend against the neighboring Thunder Kingdom, the Campbell family, as the ruler, has been advocating force for thousands of years. Every member of the clan has become a knight. For glory and goals. Therefore, when Karen was brought to Northwind City and named Campbell, she began to receive knight education with other Campbells. In the process, she gradually got acquainted with other Campbell family members. Taylor Campbell was the first Campbell Karen knew. As the nephew of the Lord of the North Wind, Roger, Taylor has been living in the Northwind City since his birth. He is highly valued for his outstanding talents. Originally, after the death of Roger's eldest son, he was once considered to be a member of the Northwind City. The next successor. However, the appearance of Karen broke Taylor's fantasy. It is precisely because of this that Taylor is very hostile to Karen. When receiving night training in the Northwind City, the opponent is often provocative. Because of his earlier contact with the night breathing method, Taylor's strength is much stronger than Karen, so he is facing provocations. At that time, Karen would choose to be patient. Until 3 days ago. Karen found out that Daisy, the girl she had always admired, was hiding in the corner and crying quietly. After inquiring, she learned that she was humiliated by Taylor. The young and energetic Karen suddenly became angry and challenged Taylor uncontrollably. The ending is self-evident. While the Northwind Lord Roger was patrolling the territory, Taylor made heavy moves during the duel with Karen, which directly caused his death to Huangchuan, so Chu Bai's soul took over this body. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. You are not to blame for this. Karen shook her head. Taylor's hostility towards him has long been due. Even without Daisy's affairs, he would find other ways to force Karen to confront each other. Blindly forbearing will only get the opponent's gain. Anyway, I have to thank you. Daisy bit her lip and said softly, Master Karen was injured because of me, and I don't know how to repay you. I made this bowl of corn soup with some herbs. After drinking it, your injury it will be better and faster. On the table next to, the thick soup in the tray exudes a tempting fragrance. Thank you, Daisy. Karen smiled shyly. Perhaps because of inheriting the memory of her predecessor, when facing the girl Daisy, Karen always has a feeling of admiration in her heart, just like her youth, full of beauty and expectation. Then, Master Karen, rest first, I won't bother you. Then, Daisy turned around, and before leaving the room, she suddenly turned her head and kissed Karen on the face. There was a shy expression on her immature face, and she ran out of the room like a bunny. Really nostalgic youth. Karen couldn't help sighing as she stroked her cheek. There is still a girl's warmth on his face. Youth means beauty to everyone. Even though the soul of this body is a middle-aged uncle, facing the kiss of a beautiful girl, he still gives birth to a little bit in his heart. Throbbing. Immediately afterwards, Karen turned her head and looked aside. In the tray on the table, the corn soup was still exuding heat. Karen, who just happened to feel a little hungry, suddenly moved her index finger, grabbed a wooden spoon, scooped a spoon, and delivered it directly into her mouth. Alert! The subject is eating toxic substances, please stop the behavior immediately. The sudden sound in his mind caused Karen's pupils to shrink suddenly, and even the wooden spoon he was holding fell into the bowl. This voice is Protoss. Karen opened her eyes wide in vain, a faint sheen appeared astonished, and she uttered a little incredulously, and trembled, could it be, that experiment was a success? The Protoss chip is here for you. At this time, there was a mechanical sound in his mind again, and Karen's heart was beating wildly. After a while, he suppressed the strong throbbing forcefully. Protoss chip, also known as smart chip. That is the crystallization of the civilization and wisdom of Siebla Star, the greatest research project of the 23rd century. After being combined with the human body, it will open the analysis and storage functions, which can be called the world's top mobile optical brain. Before Karen crossed, the Protoss chip research had reached the final step, but in the end it ended in failure, which led to a big explosion in the laboratory, and Chu Bai, the head of the scientific research project, was also burned to ashes in the fire. So, I made it. Karen sighed and murmured, the last step of the Protoss chip is to combine with the human body, but it is not the body, but the soul. That explosion caused the Protoss to merge with my soul, so they traveled to this world together. If so, then... Suddenly, Karen flashed her eyes, lowered her head, looked at the corn soup on the table, her face became expressionless, scooped up a spoon again, and put it into her mouth. Alert! The subject is eating toxic substances. In his mind, the sound of the Protoss machine sounded again, and Karen's eyes showed a cold luster, spit out the corn soup, and gently wiped the corners of her mouth. The soup is poisonous, but why? Karen crossed her hands in front of her chest, her eyes flickered slightly, and she began to organize memories in her mind. With the assistance of the Protoss, the 16-year-old boy's life experience flashed like a movie. Half a year ago, I was brought to Baifeng City by the cavalry. From this time on, Karen was involved in disputes. After the death of the eldest son of the Lord of the North Wind, the issue of the succession of the North Wind City became the goal of everyone's contention. Taylor Campbell. A burly young figure appeared in Karen's mind. The person most likely to poison himself in Baifeng City was undoubtedly this Campbell who had almost obtained the right to inherit the Lord. Since Daisy brought the soup. So, what role does she play in this matter? Kane stroked his chin, his expression constantly changing. Today, it doesn't seem to be the first time Daisy brought food. Karen recalled the memory in her mind. Since coming to Northwind City half a year ago, Daisy, as a maid, has been responsible for preparing food for Karen every day. In this case, poisoning seems to be a breeze. Protoss, scan. Karen looked down at the soup bowl. During the scan, a poisonous plant green ding mushroom was found. Information introduction: the wild fungus that grows in the rainforest has slight toxins. Long-term consumption will reduce the strength of the body's blood, weaken the immune system, and cause death in severe cases. Soon, the Protoss in his mind gave an answer. The toxic substance in the corn soup is a wild fungus called green ding mushroom. The toxicity is not strong, but long-term consumption will cause the effect of qi and blood decay, and gradually make the eater more and more the weaker. Green ding mushroom. Karen's eyes flickered, and she used a spoon to pick out a section of mushrooms. During the 6 months she came to Baifeng City, Daisy brought food every day, and almost every kind of food was mixed with this kind of green diced mushrooms. If only once or twice, it may be accidental. But in almost all foods, there are mixed green and diced mushrooms. Obviously Daisy knows the characteristics of this plant well, so she did it deliberately. After confirming the poisoner, Karen's eyes grew colder. In his mind, segments of memories began to interweave, and information and clues outlined a complete event. After discovering that the soup sent by Daisy was poisonous, it seemed that many things had been explained. It's no wonder that Karen came to the Northwind City for half a year, but under the training of a lot of resources, he was unable to master the night breathing method for a long time, and even gradually lost the attention of the Northwind Lord Roger. All this is their conspiracy. Half a year ago, when Karen came to the Northwind City, Daisy approached deliberately and used her role as a maid to poison her. Due to the effect of the green mushroom weakening the blood, Karen was unable to master the night breathing method for a long time. Therefore, Karen, who had received much attention, has gradually lost the attention of Northwind Lord Roger. Immediately after, Taylor used Karen's goodwill towards Daisy to lure him into a duel with him, so as to take the assassin and directly resolve this worst enemy who is fighting with him for the inheritance of the Northwind City. Inferring what happened in her mind, Karen chilled slightly. The seemingly peaceful castle is full of conspiracies and tricks. Tyler Campbell used half a year to successfully eradicate his competitors. As long as Karen dies, he will still be the best heir to the Northwind City. Fortunately, I have Protoss. Karen felt a little grateful in her heart. If there were no warnings from the Protoss, he would still be unable to notice that he was already in a poisoned state, and gradually his blood and qi had declined and died. What a poor fellow! After inferring the whole story, Karen shook his head. She felt a trace of pity for the former owner of her body, and was poisoned by the girl she admired, but Karen didn't notice until she died. Don't worry, since I inherited your identity, I will avenge you. Afterwards, Karen took a deep breath, her eyes gradually calmed, and said, since everything is clear, then first of all, the problem I want to solve is the chronic toxin on my body. Protoss, Scan the whole body, call up body data. Scanning. Name, Karen Campbell. Occupation, Nun. Strength, 0.7, Constitution, 0.5, Agility, 0.8, Spirit, 0.9. Skill, North Wind Swordsmanship. LV1, Passive, Wolf Heart Breathing Method, not mastered. Soul Power, 0. Status, Poisoned. Looking at the data panel in front of him, Karen frowned slightly. The 4 basic attributes of a normal adult man can reach 1 point, but because Karen is currently in a poisoned state, all attributes are not up to standard, and even his physique is only 0.5. After that, Karen looked down again. The Northwind swordsmanship that appears in the skill bar is the Campbell family swordsmanship that Karen has mastered in the 6 months since he came to the Northwind city. LV1 means he has just started, and the other passive wolf heart breathing method is still in the infancy. Master the state. Soul power? What is this? In the second to last line of the data panel, a message that was unfamiliar to Karen appeared. He didn't know what soul power meant, but did not continue to think. After shaking his head, he looked solemnly at the last line of information. The status column is in poisoning. Due to the long-term consumption of green diced mushrooms, Karen's body chi and blood have deteriorated, and he has reached a very weak place. Therefore, the first problem he faces now is to dissolve the toxins in the body and restore his own state. Otherwise, even if Karen is alive now, at most half a month, he will die because of the decay of chi and blood. Protoss, analyze, how to dissolve the toxins on my body? Enzo asked. In the analysis, insufficient information. In his mind, there was a mechanical voice. Although Protoss possesses extremely powerful analysis functions, it still cannot provide a detoxification plan when there is insufficient information. Not enough information. Karen frowned slightly. Then, there was a sense of suspicion in his heart. The Protoss had just been bound to his soul, but it was still almost in a blank state. Only by collecting enough information could the database function be built. Karen thought for a moment, then got up and left the room. Since I want to collect information, the library in the castle is naturally the best choice. According to the memory in her mind, Karen came to the library on the second floor of the castle, opened the door and walked in. The dim library room was silent. Rows of bookshelves are arranged longitudinally, and they are full of books. Because Baifeng City advocates force, even if it contains a lot of knowledge, it is rarely visited by people at ordinary times. Even the bookshelves are covered with a layer of dust. Protoss, turn on the recording function. Karen gave an order in her heart, and at the same time she pulled out a book from the shelf and began to quickly browse it. With the recording function of Protoss, it took almost less than 3 minutes to record the content of the entire book into the database. Then, Karen pulled out another book. 3 hours passed quickly, and all the books on a shelf were scanned by Karen and included in the database. During the reading process, he also learned more about the world. Protoss, can you now figure out a plan to dissolve the green mushroom poison? After 3 hours of reading, a large amount of information has been stored in the Protoss database, so Karen tried to make a calculation, using Protoss analysis function to calculate a solution to the poison of the green ding mushroom. The mission is being established, analysis is complete. Green ding mushrooms contain slight toxins. Long-term consumption will cause the blood to decay and cause death. People who are poisoned can try to use ice leaf mint to detoxify. Method: chew raw food and take clean water. Success rate, 85%. Immediately, Karen's eyes lit up. Ice leaf mint. Looking at the information emerging in the iris, Karen thought with a thoughtful expression on her face. The plant that can dissolve the poison of green mushrooms is called ice leaf mint. It is not a rare plant. Because the leaves emit a refreshing smell, they are mostly used by nobles to relieve heat in summer. Some are planted in the small garden of the castle. Karen put the book in her hand back on the shelf, turned and left the library. He walked out of the castle quickly, and according to the memory in his mind, came to a quiet small garden. He soon found a few ice-leaf mint plants, leaned over, picked off a few leaves, and carried them into his arms. Then, Karen returned to the castle room and locked the door behind him. Taking a glass of clear water, Karen squeezed a piece of ice-leaf mint and put it directly into his mouth to chew. The bitter taste spread in his mouth, and he quickly took a sip of the clear water in the glass. Suddenly, a refreshing sensation spread throughout the body. It works! Karen's eyes lit up. He didn't hesitate, he ate a few pieces of ice-leaf mint, mixed with water and chewed. As the bitter taste melted away, a cooling sensation rushed from his abdomen to the top of his head. Protoss, call up my body data. Name, Karen Campbell. Occupation, Nun. Strength, 0.7, Constitution, 0.6, Agility, 0.8, Spirit, 0.9. Skill, Northwind Swordsmanship. LV1, Passive, Wolf Heart Breathing Method, not mastered. Soul Power, 0. Status, Normal. Looking at the return to normal state, Karen breathed a sigh of relief. According to the plan analyzed by the Protoss, after eating ice-leaf mint, the green mushroom poison was immediately resolved, and his physique increased by 0.1 at the same time. The poisoning problem has been solved, and then it's time to consider other things. Karen's eyes flickered slightly, and he looked at the wooden table next to him. Apart from a piece of white wax, there was a book with thick fingers on it. On the cover of that book, the words Wolf Heart Breathing Method are printed. This is the night breathing method inherited from the Northwind City. Only people with Campbell family blood can practice. Normally, 2 months of training can be initially mastered, but Karen has been trained as a knight for half a year, but it is still too late. Can't get started. Moreover, this is still in the case of Northwind Lord Roger, who has devoted a lot of resources to cultivation. It's no wonder Karen loses attention. In this world that advocates power, only the strong can control everything. Even if Karen is the blood of the Lord of the Northwind, if he wants to inherit the city of the Northwind, he must at least have a knight-level combat power. Karen has been trained as a knight for half a year, and a lot of resources have been consumed in the process. Yu read www.yuyugonshu.com, but he was unable to master the wolf heart breathing method for a long time, and he couldn't even reach the level of an apprentice knight. As the Lord of the Northwind, Roger has long been disappointed with this bastard. If it hadn't been for the past 6 months, Karen had a good grasp of the Northwind swordsmanship. Maybe he had been expelled from the Northwind City by Roger long ago, and even Camel's surname would have been taken away. Since I am still alive, Taylor will never give up. The issue of the inheritance rights of the Northwind City is an irreconcilable contradiction between the two of us. If you want to protect yourself, you must master the power. Karen's eyes flickered, and her thoughts changed. Protoss, turn on the information transmission function. Karen took a deep breath, turned on the wolf heart breathing method, relied on the Protoss to pass the above information into his mind, and began to practice. The so-called night breathing method is a method of human body practice. Through the special breathing rhythm, the nutrition in the body is transformed into special energy. This is the training process of the night breathing method. Therefore, everyone who receives night training needs a lot of resources to cultivate. Karen, as the son of the Northwind Lord, has been devoted to countless resources in 6 months. But because of the long-term consumption of green mushrooms, his blood decayed, and the nutrients in his body could not be converted into energy, so he was unable to master the wolf heart breathing method for a long time. And now, the toxins in Karen's body have been resolved. Relying on the data transmission function of the Protoss, Karen quickly mastered the practice method of the wolf heart breathing method. With the regular ups and downs of his chest, his breathing showed a rhythm different from that of ordinary people. At the same time, after receiving night training, a large amount of resources were cultivated within half a year, and the nutrients stored in the body are gradually transformed into special energy. This is obviously one of the manifestations of successfully mastering the wolf heart breathing method. When dawn breaks, the morning sun rises. The bright rays of light spilled onto the earth and brought the revival of Baifeng City. It was a symbol of the wolf heart castle of the Campbell family. The servants were cleaning the courtyard when a sound of horseshoes suddenly came from outside. At the north gate of the castle, a cavalry returned. The head of his sturdy, wearing silver-white armor, with a wolf head cross sword hung around his waist, and short grey-white hair on his head. The expression on his face is majestic, like a white wolf-like eyes, revealing a sharp luster. Lord of the North Wind, Roger Campbell. As Roger rode his horse into the castle, a horsewoman with a fiery red leather armor holding a white wolf banner in one hand followed closely, followed by dozens of black armored cavalry and a group of black cavalry. The gangsters they held captives with ropes. Notify the young people of the family and gather at the training ground in 10 minutes. As soon as he stepped into the castle, Roger gave orders to the butler Moore, and then led his cavalry straight to the direction of the school. The second floor of the castle, in a room. The noise from outside awakened Karen on the bed. He opened his eyes, his undulating chest gradually calmed down, and then stood up and looked out the window. A cavalry is stepping into the castle, and the servants evade. Father is back. Karen recognized the man in the silver armor, who was the father of this body, the Lord of the North Wind, Roger Campbell. According to the memory in his mind, Roger left Northwind City with a cavalry team not long ago. A tour of the Campbell family territory, today is just the end of the day to return. At this time, there was a knock on the door, and a servant pushed open the door and said cautiously, "Master Karen, Master Roger has ordered you to go to the training ground, please prepare." Karen raised her brows and nodded to show that she knew. After the servant left, Karen did not rush to the training ground, but took a deep breath and stood in the middle of the room. Protoss, call up my body data. Name, Karen Campbell. Occupation, Apprentice. Knight. Strength, 0.9, Constitution, 0.8, Agility, 0.8, Spirit, 0.9. Skill, Northwind Swordsmanship. LV1, Passive, Wolf Heart Breathing Method. LV1 Soul Power, 0. Status, Normal. With the end of the night of training, Karen finally mastered the wolf heart breathing method. Not only did his physique and strength increase by 0.2, but he also became a knight apprentice by profession, which meant that he already possessed the special energy that belongs to the knight in his body. Accumulate thinly. Karen's eyes flashed. Apart from Protoss assistance, the main reason for successfully mastering the wolf heart breathing technique in one night is that the toxins in Karen's body have been resolved. Within half a year of the night training, those who poured a lot of resources into the reserve of nutrition, no longer frustrated in the body due to the decay of chi and blood, all transformed into night energy in one fell swoop. Three-pronged approach, Karen successfully promoted to trainee knight. Although I have mastered the wolf heart breathing method and become a trainee knight, my physical fitness is still too weak. Looking at the data panel in front of her, Karen couldn't help but shook her head. Long-term consumption of green ding mushrooms will cause chi and blood decay. Even if it has been resolved by ice leaf mint at this time, it still leaves some damage to the body, and it is very difficult to recover in a short time. Forget it, the physical problem will recover slowly. Afterwards, Karen put on her clothes, pinned the cross sword hung on the wall to her waist diagonally, and left the room to go to the training field. Not long after, Karen came to an empty field. This is the training ground, and it is also the Campbell family, where the younger generation receives night training. Nyo is a large open space, the size of a court, and many people have gathered at this time. In the open space in the center of the training ground, two figures are fighting fiercely. One of them is a burly figure, nearly 2 meters tall, wearing steel armor, holding a knight's sword in both hands, and launching a fierce attack on the enemy. Good job, Taylor. Come on again. That's it, kill him. Around, the Campbell family's teenagers continued to cheer for the burly youth. His opponent was a middle-aged man who was not wearing any protective gear, and the weapon he used was just an iron sword. Under Taylor's fierce attack, the middle-aged man struggled to support it. Soon, several wounds appeared on his body. As Taylor attacked fiercely again, a wound was cut on his right leg by the sword blade. Under the severe pain, the middle-aged man couldn't help kneeling to the ground. "Wait, I give up." The middle-aged man hurriedly begged for mercy, but Taylor turned a blind eye, a hideous expression flashed across his face, and the sword was cut across the man's neck. Suddenly, the head of the middle-aged man flew up, blood gushing out, and watching the headless corpse slowly fall, Taylor raised his head somewhat triumphantly. Ding! The soul power system is on. I found a little soul power. Does the subject absorb it? At the moment the middle-aged man died, reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Karen suddenly heard the voice of the Protoss in his mind. His pupils shrank and nodded instinctively. Then he saw a spot of light floating on the headless corpse, sinking into Karen's body like a firefly. Soul power? What is this? Karen was puzzled, but there was no time to ask at this moment. Taking advantage of everyone being attracted by Taylor, he quietly merged into the crowd. In front of the training ground, Roger nodded slightly. Killing opponents of the same level in 6 minutes is not bad. Roger's majestic face showed a smile, and then he said, "However, during the battle just now, your attack was too impatient. If it's a battlefield above, the enemy will most likely target this weakness and besiege you." "I see, Lord Roger." Taylor nodded quickly. Hidden in the crowd, Karen looked around and found that in addition to the Campbell family, there were many strange men bound by ropes on the training ground of Newark. Those men were in ragged clothes, most of them were wounded, but the eyes were faintly shiny, as if they were a group of fierce beasts, only afraid of Roger's deterrence that they did not dare to move. Gangster. Karen thoughtfully. Not long ago, when Roger took the cavalry to patrol the territory, he happened to defeat a gang of gangs, so he took the captured gangsters back to Wolfhart Castle, intending to use them to hone the fighting experience of the young generation of Campbell family. After giving Taylor a few simple instructions, Roger instructed his cavalry to take several bandits to the center of the training ground and untie the ropes on their bodies. "Alizi, you can give them some advice." At this moment, Roger suddenly spoke, and commanded the female knight who was wearing a fiery red leather armor with a sturdy posture beside him. The female knight was expressionless and walked to the center of the training ground. "Alizi." Looking at the reader-mettered female knight ahead, Karen thought through her face. According to the memory in her mind, her name was Alizi. She was the most loyal underling of the Lord of the North Wind. She was also a true genius, only 23 years old. He was promoted to the realm of knights at the age of, even in the entire Silver Star Kingdom, it is an extremely rare existence. Cherish this opportunity. Next to, Roger spoke quietly and said, "Watching the knights battle can make you understand more skills. Although the opponent is just a few bandits, it is enough for you." Right after, Roger told Alizi again. "Alizi, against these gangsters, don't use grudge, try to show the skills of Northwind swordsmanship." "Yes, Lord Roger." Alizi drew the cross sword from her waist and shook her head casually. Her long flame-like hair was scattered. The red wallet outlines the beautiful lines, revealing her beautiful figure. In the middle of the training ground, 3 gangsters showed fierce faces. The ropes on their bodies had been untied, but under Roger's deterrence, they still did not dare to make any movements. Even though the cavalry nearby distributed iron swords to the hands of the 3, they still did not attack Alizi. "It's time to start." Roger was indifferent, and said, "In the name of the Lord of the Northwind, I promise you that as long as you can support Alizi for 3 minutes, you will be exempted no matter what crimes you have committed." After hearing these words, the 3 people's eyes lit up at the same time. When they were arrested in Baifeng City, the 3 bandits had no hope of their own destiny. According to the laws of the Silver Star Kingdom, the Lord has the right to impose the death penalty on criminals in the territory, not to mention the fact that he has always been known for being cruel. Lord of the North Wind. But now, they seem to usher in the hope of living. My lord, are you true? A gangster asked boldly. Of course. Roger said quietly. Around, the Campbell family teenagers were all staring at the center of the training field, but Taylor's eyes flashed a little joke, as if mocking the gangster's overpowering ability. They didn't know Alizé's strength at all. As one of the only 2 official knights in the Northwind City, even without using any grudge, Alizé faced 10 bandits at the same time. It was a breeze. At the same time, in the center of the training ground, the battle has begun. After the 3 gangsters heard Roger's promise, there was a glimmer of hope in their hearts. As one gangster roared, the 3 simultaneously waved their iron swords and besieged Alizé. Protoss, turn on the recording function. Looking at the battle ahead, Karen ordered in her heart. Brush. Facing the siege of the 3 gangsters, Alizé's expression on her face remained unchanged. She raised her arms at will, and the cross sword picked up, colliding with a gangster's iron sword, and instantly knocked down the opponent's weapon. The next moment, Alizé pierced out with a sword. The sharp cross sword pierced through the throat of a gangster, and then quickly pulled it out. Before the blood sprayed out, Alizé had already swung the sword again and made a narrow wound on the chest of another gangster. Plop! The gangster who was pierced in his throat fell to his knees, covering the wound with his hands, but the blood couldn't stop the gushing out. Shocked luster appeared in his eyes, and then he completely lost his breath. Next to, the injured gangster turned pale. Before he could react, Alizé had already pierced her heart. The last gangster quickly stepped back, trying to get a distance, but wearing a red wallet, the fast-moving female knight had already deceived her. The cross sword was pierced accurately and penetrated the culprit's right eye. In his painful wailing, Alizé drew the cross sword, and then sealed the throat with a sword, which completely ended the opponent's life. In less than a minute, all 3 gangsters died. Around, the Campbell family teenagers all stared wide-eyed, and were a little shocked by Alizé's clean swordsmanship. Even Taylor, who was quite proud of him, couldn't help but open his mouth. Is this the power of the knight? Karen's pupils shrank. With the help of the Protoss recording function, everything that happened just now is stored in the database in the form of video. Karen can check it at any time and learn the swordsmanship used by Alizé in battle. Ding! Found 3 points of soul power. Does the subject absorb it? In his mind, the Protoss mechanical sound came again. Karen did not hesitate, and directly chose yes. From the corpse of the bandit killed by Alizé, 3 spots of light that no one else could see flew over. Happiness. At this time, Roger patted his palms, looked at the gangster who was killed by Alizé, with an expression of appreciation on his face, and said softly. Yes, Alizé, your Northwind swordsmanship has improved a lot. Compared with you, I am still a lot worse. Alizé shook her head, her expression unchanged, and walked down from the center of the training ground. A few cavalry trot forward quickly, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com dragged away the bodies of the 3 culprits. Then, Roger ordered someone to untie a gangster's rope and took him to the center of the training ground, and at the same time called out a young Campbell from the crowd. If you can win in battle, all guilt will be exempted. Roger said to the culprit. Then, he looked at the young Campbell in a white training suit and said quietly, he will be your opponent. In the course of this battle, anyone will not interfere, whether life or death depends on you. The eyes of the boy in white clothes changed, and his face turned pale. Although as a member of the Campbell family, he received knight training very early, and often confronted other Campbells, but if it involves life and death battle, he has never experienced it once. Listening to Roger's words, no one will interfere in the next duel, and only one person between the gangster and himself can survive. In order to win the chance of survival, the gangster will definitely fight to the death. You can choose to give up, but from now on, you will lose the family's monthly resource training. Seeing the boy in white clothes hesitated, Roger said indifferently. The white suit boy looked struggling, but in the end he shook his head. In this world that advocates force, the loss of resource training is equivalent to severing the hope of becoming a knight. No Campbell can accept this. Therefore, even if there is some fear in his heart, the young man in white clothes still drew the sword from his waist. What? The next moment, as Roger announced the start, the bandits rushed up with a low growl. He had never been trained as an orthodox knight. He could only fight with brute force. The iron sword wielded without rules, but with that fierce aura, it still made the young boy in white clothes unable to help but retreat for a half step. The iron sword collided with the cross sword, making a crisp sound, and the gangster who was fighting against the white-clothed boy showed a fierce face, roaring like a beast. The boy in white clothes has a pale face, and his figure quickly backs away. Go to hell! The next moment, the culprit held the iron sword in both hands, and once again slashed at the white-clothed boy. The blade was not too sharp, and looked like a sickle of death in the sun. Ding dong! The white-clothed young man blocked with a horizontal sword, and after holding the gangster's iron sword offensive, he used his hands in vain to knock the opponent back a few steps. Come on! Carl! Don't embarrass Baifeng City! Use Northwind swordsmanship! Around, the Campbell teenagers watching the battle cheered for Carl. It seems that with the encouragement of his companions, the fear in Carl's heart gradually disappeared. He took a deep breath and his eyes became firm. Come on, bastard! Immediately afterwards, Carl held the cross sword in both hands, as if a special force surged out of his body, as if the whole person's aura had changed. Not far away, Karen's pupils shrank. This is grudge. Through the scanning function of the chip, Karen saw that in the body of the boy in white clothes, the energy like an air current was spreading toward his limbs with his heart as the core. After activating his internal grudge, Carl quickly rushed to the opposite side. Compared with before, his speed has been significantly improved. The steps under his feet are like a white wolf, and he immediately rushes to the culprit, swinging the cross sword held in both hands, and performing Northwind swordsmanship. Brush! Shining with a sharp blade of cold light, it quickly cut through the air. The bandit quickly blocked, but he couldn't keep up with Carl's speed. After several rounds of confrontation, the wounds on his body became more and more. Dead! Carl roared, and the cross sword slashed away. The head rolled to the ground, still with an unwilling expression on his face. After beheading the gangster, Carl finally breathed a sigh of relief, his chest was undulating, and the vindictive rushing towards his limbs gradually returned to his heart. Next, Potter. Seeing the end of the duel between Carl and the gangster, Roger's expression on his face remained unchanged. He waved his hand to beckon the servant to drag the corpse away, and called out Camel's name. A round-faced boy named Potter stepped out and started a duel with another gangster. During this tour of the territory, Roger deliberately brought back some gangsters, just to hone the younger generation of the family as a practical test. It's a world. Among the crowd, Karen's face turned pale. Just after crossing the world, he witnessed the scene, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. His heart couldn't help beating wildly, and even his body trembled slightly. Protoss. Control the adrenaline in the body, adjust the breathing rhythm. Several commands in Karen's heart, with the help of the Protoss chip, gradually recovered calm, and at this time, the 5 rounds of the duel had ended, and the bodies of several gangsters were piled together. Death to Lao Tzu! At this time, a loud roar came. In the center of the training ground, the gangster with a scar on his face had a hideous expression on his face. A sudden stab pierced the opponent's abdomen with an iron sword in his hand. Was fighting against a tall boy. After his abdomen was penetrated, red blood kept flowing out. The pain made his face pale, Fear spread in his heart, and he couldn't help but want to retreat. But at this time, the Scarface gangster saw the right time. With a grinning smile on his face, the iron sword was pulled out forcefully, and using the weakness of the tall young man's retreat, a sword ran through the opponent's throat. Suddenly, the tall boy's eyes dimmed, and then he fell to the ground. Asshole! Seeing that their familiar companions were killed by the bandits, the Campbell teenagers around them suddenly became angry and drew their cross swords, seeming to want to rush forward and kill the Scarface bandit for revenge. Roger frowned slightly and snorted coldly. Suddenly, there was no sound on the training ground, and Campbell, including Tyler, retreated back to where they were, not daring to make any more moves. "You can leave now," Roger said quietly. An expression of ecstasy appeared on the face of the scar-faced gangster. He threw down the iron sword in his hand and ran towards the outside of Wolfheart Fort. As we all know, the Northern Wind Lord has a cruel character, but he always speaks. Therefore, he who killed the Campbell boy in the duel successfully won the chance for himself to survive. The young eagle in the nest will never learn to fly without experiencing wind and rain. Roger raised his head, staring at the Campbell teenagers, and said quietly, "If you want to be strong, you must have a fearless heart. The people selected today are all trainee knights who have mastered fighting spirit. If even a group of gangsters can't defeat it, it can only mean that you have wasted the resources that the family had poured out before. Drag his body down and notify the family to claim it." Next, Stanford. The death of the tall boy did not cause Roger's mood swings. After a few simple words, he announced the start of the next duel. Cold, indifferent, strong. Karen looked at the man not far away, with these labels in her heart, and at the same time, she had more knowledge of the world. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Soon, the duels ended. The 20 gangsters who were brought back to Wolfheart Castle were almost dead. Of the Campbell family boys, only 3 were defeated in the duel, so they paid the price of their lives. "Okay, let's stop here today." Roger glanced at the Campbell boy ahead and found that all the trainee knights who mastered fighting spirit had already had a duel. If Campbell, who had not mastered fighting spirit, played, it would undoubtedly cause an excessively high death rate. Therefore, Roger announced the end, preparing to put the remaining bandits in the dungeon. However, at this moment, "Please wait, Lord Roger." Among the crowd, Taylor suddenly spoke and said, "Today's actual battle has benefited me a lot, but there are still many young people in the family who have not tried the battle. Anyway, there are only 3 gangsters left. How about leaving the opportunity to them?" Roger did not change his expression, looked at Tyler, and said in a deep voice, "Just say what you have." Feeling Roger's cold eyes, Taylor's heart trembled slightly. He regretted that he had spoken rashly, but he had already said what he said, so he could only bite the bullet and gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Karen has been in Baifeng City for half a year now, but he has not had any actual combat experience. It is better to take this opportunity today. Let him also feel the taste of blood." After that, Tyler turned his head and looked at Karen in the crowd, with a faint glow in his eyes. "Is this coming at me?" Karen's heart tightened. Due to the succession of the Northwind City, Karen was very aware of Taylor's hostility towards him, but did not expect that the other party would attack again so quickly, and in such a direct way. Around, the Campbell teenagers whispered, looking at Karen. They were also full of strange emotions, some pity, some indifferent, but more of them were gloating and watching good scenes. "Karen, get out," Roger said quietly. Originally thought that everything was over, but was pushed to the cusp of the storm by Taylor, Karen could only take a step forward, trying to calm her emotions. "Pick an opponent." Roger's tone is cold, but full of a taste that cannot be refused. Tyler's eyes flashed, and a sneer appeared on his face. Rashly put forward suggestions to push Karen to the forefront. This is also a gamble for him. It is very likely that he will be disgusted by Roger, but fortunately, he seems to be right. It has been half a year since he brought the bag to Bifeng City, but Karen's performance has never been able to satisfy Roger. With the family's large amounts of resources devoted, he can't even master the night breathing method. Therefore, in this case, Roger paid less and less attention to Karen. Although Taylor made today's proposal, perhaps in the bottom of Roger's heart, Karen has already set a deadline. If Karen still fails to show her potential within a period of time, she will definitely be completely abandoned. Karen hasn't mastered the breathing technique of knights. Will it be too dangerous to engage in actual combat now? At this moment, Alizi on the side suddenly spoke. He has been trained as a knight for half a year. Roger was unmoved, his tone was unquestionably cold, and said, "The Campbell family doesn't need waste." Seeing this, Alizi stopped talking. Karen took a deep breath, her eyes calming down. "Protoss, turn on the scanning function." Seeing that he was pushed to the cusp of the storm, it seemed impossible to escape. Even if Karen was a little worried about the next duel, she could only calm her emotions and try her best to make all the preparations. Roger let Karen choose his opponent, which is undoubtedly a good thing for him. As the Protoss turned on the scanning function, the physical data of the three culprits quickly appeared in front of Karen. Unknown character /strength, 1.2 physique, 1.1 dexterity, 0.9 spirit, 0.8 status, good. Unknown character /strength, 1.1 physique, 0.9 agility, 1.1 spirit, 0.7 status, good. Unknown character /strength, 1.3 physique, 1.2 agility, 0.6 spirit, 0.7 status, injured. Looking at the three data messages in front of her, Karen's eyes flickered. The comprehensive data of the three gangsters are not much different. The only thing worth noting is that the most burly gangster among them has only 0.6 agility and seems to be in an injured state. "It's you." Karen's eyes narrowed. He raised his finger to the burly gangster. This choice made everyone around him a little surprised. The female knight Alizi frowned slightly, wondering why Karen would choose the strongest gangster as her opponent. "Hey! Overpowered guy, really looking for death?" Tyler sneered from the bottom of his heart. The three gangsters are all tied together, and they are all in the same condition. If there is no Protoss scan, Karen can't see that the burly gangster has been injured. It seems that the right leg is broken. "Get ready to start." In front, Roger whispered. The burly gangster released his shackles, with a grinning smile on his face. He was over 2 meters tall and looked extremely tall, holding an iron sword in both hands, which seemed a bit funny. "Protoss, turn on the battle assist function. The duel is about to begin. In order to survive, the burly bandits will do their best in the battle." Although Karen has mastered the wolf heart breathing method, for the sake of safety, the battle assist function is turned on. "Come on, little thing." As Roger announced the start of the duel, the burly bandit immediately rushed forward, and the iron sword slashed like an axe, as if it could split Karen in half at once. "Dodge to the left, back 3 steps." The Protoss prompt sounded in his mind. Karen immediately followed, and while avoiding the attack of the iron sword, he tried to use the wolf heart breathing method. A special energy suddenly spread from the heart to the whole body. In an instant, Karen's momentum changed in vain. Not far away, Roger's eyes flashed, seeming to be a little surprised. Taylor in the crowd opened his eyes wide, and there was a hint of incredible in his eyes. "Vengeful, how is this possible?" Taylor's face suddenly became gloomy. Ahead, in the center of the training ground, Karen, who had activated her internal grudge, quickly rushed towards the burly gangster, twice as fast as before. The cross sword in his hand was slashed diagonally and aimed at the burly gangster's right leg. What? The fractured right leg was pierced again by the cross sword, and the long and narrow bone scars were dripping with blood. Karen saw the timing, and under the suggestion of the Protoss, he stabbed a sword in vain from the side slightly. Vash! The cross sword pierced through the throat of the burly gangster, his eyes widened suddenly, and he made a ho-ho sound in his mouth. As Karen pulled out the cross sword, his tall body fell to the ground. Karen let out a breath. The battle just lasted only less than 3 minutes, but Karen felt extremely tired. Her body seemed to be exhausted, and she became extremely weak. She just wanted to lie on the bed and take a good night's sleep. After the apprentice knight activates grudge, it lasts for up to 5 minutes. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com on the spot, Karen thought with her eyes, and secretly said, once the time limit is exceeded, the fighting energy in the body will be exhausted, and will fall into a weak state. However, when the fighting energy is activated, the speed and strength of the trainee knight will be greatly improved. Good game. Roger made a rare compliment and said softly, it seems that you have mastered the family's wolf heart breathing method and officially become an apprentice knight. Everything must be thanked for the family's cultivation. Karen leaned. Since you have become a trainee knight, then you should also take some responsibilities for the family. Immediately afterwards, Roger spoke again, thinking for a moment, Alizi, transfer 4 cavalry from the cavalry regiment and give them to Karen for command. Starting today, let him be responsible for patrolling the forest on the west of Northwind City. Yes, my lord, Alizi said solemnly. Then, Roger announced that everything was over, and the Campbell family boys on the training ground dispersed. Karen took a deep breath, suppressed the discomfort of the first murder, and prepared to return to her residence. At this moment, a tall figure stopped him. Get out of the way, Tyler. Karen said coldly. Taylor was condescending, staring at Karen, and sneered, Hey! I didn't expect that you could even master the wolf heart breathing method. It seems that as long as you have enough resources to cultivate, you can become a trainee knight even with waste. Karen frowned, a flash of anger flashed under her eyes. However, don't be proud of you. Perhaps in those rural towns, the trainee knight can be considered the number 1 person, but in the Northwind City, it is nothing. Don't think that you can inherit the Northwind City by becoming a trainee knight. After that, Taylor gave Karen a provocative look, and then walked away. The night fell quietly, and a crescent moon hung high. The bright moonlight shone on the earth, covering the earth with a touch of silver. The lights in Baifeng City were dim, and there were lively conversations in the taverns on both sides of the street. The civilians who finished their workday enjoyed a short period of joy. At the same time, Wolfheart Fort. As the Campbell family's base camp, the castle is silent at night. Most of the rooms have fallen into darkness, but in a bedroom on the 2nd floor, candles are still burning on the table. Protoss, call up my body data. Karen ordered. Name, Karen Campbell. Occupation, Apprentice Knight. Strength, 0.9, Constitution, 0.8, Agility, 0.8, Spirit, 0.9. Skill, Northwind Swordsmanship. LV1, Passive, Wolf Heart Breathing Method. LV1 Soul Power, 12. Status, Normal. The data panel appeared in front of her, and Karen stared at the Soul Power column, her eyes shone thinking. Protoss, what is soul power? Karen asked directly. In the training ground during the day, after the first bandit was killed, the Protoss reminded Karen to activate the spirit power system, but Karen didn't understand what the spirit power absorbed from the dead bandit was. Soul power is the essence of life. It is a special energy that only the celestial spirits can extract. The subject consumes soul power and can improve skills and passivity, so that its own strength can be quickly improved. In his mind, the Protoss gave an answer, and Karen's eyes suddenly lit up. What's this? Goldfinger. According to Protoss' explanation, soul power is the essence of life, which can be used to improve skills. Karen looked at the data panel again, and then noticed that in the passive wolf heart breathing method LV1 and Northwind Swordsmanship LV1, each appears with a & sign. Karen tried to click on the and sign behind Wolf Heart Breathing Method LV1. The original 12 points of soul power suddenly consumed 10 points, but as a warmth spread throughout the body, the Wolf Heart Breathing Method also became LV2. So, upgrade. A surprise appeared in Karen's eyes. The improvement of the night breathing method requires long-term training in addition to a large amount of resource cultivation under normal circumstances, and relying on spirit power, Karen upgraded the Wolf Heart Breathing method to LV2 in the blink of an eye, which is undoubtedly he saves a lot of time and energy. With the help of spirit power, the Wolf Heart Breathing method can be quickly improved. However, attributes such as strength and physique cannot rely on the help of spirit power. If you don't want to spend a lot of time exercising, you can only rely on resources to speed up. Karen's eyes flickered, her expression on her face thinking. The Lost Continent is a world full of extraordinary properties, so there are many fantasy objects. Whether in the mountains or forests or in the wilderness, there may be some precious plants growing. With the scanning function of Protoss, I can collect those precious plants. As long as we cooperate with sufficient resources, the promotion of attributes is not a problem. Taylor is very hostile to me because of the inheritance of the Northwind City. He may be in trouble at any time, and he must improve his strength as soon as possible to protect himself. Karen made up her mind to use her own advantages to improve her strength as soon as possible. At this time, there was a knock on the door suddenly, and Karen frowned slightly, already guessing who it was in her heart. The door was pushed open, and the maid Daisy walked in. "Master Karen." Daisy spoke softly, holding a bowl of thick soup in both hands, and said sweetly, "This is the corn soup I prepared for you. Please drink it while it is hot." While talking, Daisy put the corn soup on the table. "Thank you, Daisy." Karen pretended to be shy. Daisy covered her mouth and chuckled, her eyes gleaming. She suddenly said, "I heard that Master Karen personally killed a gangster when he was on the training ground today. Is this true?" Karen nodded, her face pale. "Looking back now, I am still a little scared." He patted his chest, with a lingering look on his face, and said, "When the tall gangster rushed towards me, I thought I was bound to die, but fortunately, at a critical moment, a warm current spread all over the body." "Have you been promoted to apprentice knight in battle?" Daisy's eyes flashed. "Yes, it is like that." A smile appeared on Karen's face, and she rejoiced, "Fortunately, I awakened grudge in that battle, otherwise I will definitely be killed by the bandits. By the way, why did you suddenly ask this?" Daisy's expression froze, and then she reacted quickly, with a shy expression on her face, and she lowered her head and said, "I am worried about you. Today, I heard that Master Karen was fighting with the gangster. I was scared to rest. However, fortunately, Master Karen is fine, and he has mastered the method of breathing with wolf heart." Karen sneered in her heart, but she had a touched expression on her face. "The soup is getting cold, Master Karen, please drink it while it is hot." At this moment, Daisy turned off the subject and urged Karen to drink the soup while it was hot. Karen nodded, picked up the soup bowl and took a sip. Seeing Karen drank the corn soup, a smile appeared on Daisy's face, and then she turned around to leave, her eyes flashed with cold sheen. Crunch! As Daisy turned and closed the door, Karen's smile faded instantly, spitting the corn soup back into the bowl, and then poured it all into the flower pot by the window, her face becoming expressionless. Wolf Heart Fort, 3rd floor. In the study room at the end of the corridor, there are 2 bookshelves stacked on the wall. The fire in the barrier has been extinguished. On the mahogany square table not far away, a section of the candle on the candlestick swayed slightly, dispelling the surrounding darkness. The banditry in the territory is becoming more and more rampant. It seems that before the autumn harvest comes, it must be cleaned up. A female voice sounded and Alize stood in the middle of the study. "If it's just a gang, it's not enough to be afraid." Behind a desk, Roger sat on an iron chair with his hands crossed on his chest, his eyes shone sharply like a wolf, and he said in a low voice, "What happened recently is not that simple, near Baifeng City. Suddenly there are so many gangsters, and they are well equipped, they don't seem to be formed by a group of refugees at all." "Do you mean, Thunder Kingdom?" Alizi hesitated. "Hey! Based on what I know about Brundy, that old guy suffered a big loss in the war 6 months ago, and he will never let go. What's more, it has not been a day or two for Thunder Kingdom to focus on that mining area." Jileng snorted. "With so many cavalry lost, Brundy still dare to covet the iron ore field. Who knows?" Roger looked resolute, and said quietly, "Although we won the war half a year ago, the Northwind City was not without losses. If a war starts again in a short period of time, it will be an unbearable thing for both parties." Alizi fell silent, sighing slightly in her heart. This kind of war has always killed 1,000 enemies and harmed 800. Although the Northwind City repelled the Thunder Kingdom in the war half a year ago, it also took a very serious loss. Even the eldest son of the Lord of the North Wind died in battle. The atmosphere in the room became depressed. "By the way, Uncle Roger." After a while, Alizi suddenly raised her head and said, "Do you have any plans for Tyler and Karen? Since the death of Brother Amos, the issue of inheritance has been inconclusive. Many people in the family have been discussing this issue recently. Because of the iron ore field, the Thunder Kingdom has always been unsuccessful. If you don't make a choice between Taylor and Karen as soon as possible, it is likely to cause people's hearts within the family to float. This matter does not need to be considered for the time being." Roger shook his head slightly, his face calm, and said, "The Campbell family has always admired the strong, no matter who it is. The most basic requirement is to become a knight in order to obtain the right to inherit the Northwind City. If they don't have enough strength to support them, even if they inherit the Northwind City in the future, they will not be able to resist the coveting of the Thunder Kingdom, and it will only bring the Campbell family's 1,000-year-old territory to fall." Roger sighed as he spoke. "Unfortunately, your status is special. Otherwise, it is most suitable to inherit the Northwind City. With your talent, even if you become a knight in the future, it may not be an impossible thing." Alizi bit her lip, but said nothing. "Let them fight. Anyway, I can live a long time, and there is no need to rush the issue of Baifeng City's inheritance." Roger said indifferently. "But, if Taylor and Karen are allowed to compete, one person will inevitably die." Alizi said with a heavy tone, "Karen is your blood after all, if he died like this. Family interests are above all else." Roger interrupted Alizi and said quietly, "Whoever can show higher value, whether Taylor or Karen, can inherit the Northwind City. This will not change because of blood." "I see." Alizi sighed. When dawn breaks, the morning sun rises. The sky in the distance was slightly white, and a faint golden sunlight pierced through the clouds and swayed above the ground. To the west of the territory of Baifeng City, there was a lush forest, and the calls of insects and birds came from inside. Ta ta ta! At this time, there was a sound of horseshoes, and several cavalrymen galloped from a distance, all wearing Baifeng City armor. The leader was a young man with a cross sword hanging from his waist. It was Karen Campbell. "Master Karen, this is Yukon Forest." Next to, Joseph, a middle-aged cavalryman, pointed to the forest in front of him, and introduced, "This forest is in the territory of Northwind City, and it is also the target of our patrol this time. According to my experience, patrolling in the Yukon Forest is unlikely to encounter gangsters, but beware of the beasts in the forest. 3 years ago, when I was patrolling here with Lord Roger, I encountered an adult mountain bear." Joseph recalled his experience 3 years ago, but he still seemed to have some lingering fears. "That is really a terrible monster, standing up to a height of 4 meters, it is almost like a meat mountain. I saw with my own eyes, that mountain bear slapped a soldier into mud. Fortunately, Lord Roger led the patrol. He personally shot the mountain bear and wounded it. In the end, he fled in embarrassment. He didn't show up again for several years, and I don't know if he is already dead. Hearing Joseph's narration, Karen cheered up in her heart. Yesterday on the training ground, after beheading a gangster, Roger handed over the 4 cavalry to Karen's command and asked him to take charge of the patrol of the Yukon Forest on the west side of the Baifeng City territory. Today is Karen's first day of patrol. Not far away, there are lush trees in the Yukon Forest, with a large number of vines and branches crisscrossing, forming an extremely complex environment. As Karen and others rode into the forest, a line of birds swept into the sky. The area of Yukon Forest is very large. The deeper it is, the more dangerous it is. Next to, Joseph whispered, Master Karen, we only need to conduct a simple patrol of the forest periphery today. I understand. On horseback, Karen nodded. The 4 cavalrymen drawn from the cavalry regiment, 3 of them are ordinary soldiers, only Joseph was a trainee knight when he was young, and he also served as the captain of 10. As he grew older, Joseph's vitality gradually weakened, so he gave up the 10th captain's position and joined the cavalry regiment. With his rich experience, he was sent by Roger to Karen as his deputy. Protoss, turn on the scanning function. Karen ordered in his heart. The lush forest seems calm, but in reality, there are a large number of beasts and snakes hidden. Even if it is only patrolling the periphery, Karen is full of energy in her heart, always paying attention to the surrounding movement. Alert! An unknown creature is found approaching, threatening the subject, mild. Walking in the forest on horseback, Karen suddenly heard the alarm sound of the Protoss in his mind, his eyes condensed suddenly, and he drew out the cross sword without thinking about it. A red snake sprang up from the grass and bit at Karen's neck. Karen's face remained unchanged, and she swung a cross sword, and the sharp blade instantly cut the red snake into 2 pieces. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com continued to struggle after falling on the ground, and it was completely stiff after a while. It's dangerous, it's a red ring snake! Joseph exclaimed from the side. Karen jumped off his horse, looked at the red snake on the ground, and a line of information suddenly appeared in his mind. Red ring snake, snake creature, the blood contains very poisonous, 10 grams of dose is enough to make adults fatal. Snake gall is eaten raw can strengthen the physical fitness, snake bones soaked in spirits to drink, can increase resistance to toxins. Good thing. Karen's eyes lit up and put away the body of the red ring snake. Master Karen, what are you doing? Seeing Karen's movements, Joseph was slightly surprised, and said in doubt, the red ring snake is a highly poisonous creature. If the wound is contaminated with its blood, it may cause death if it is not done properly. It's nothing, I just have a soft spot for snake meat. Karen shook his head. The red ring snake gall can strengthen the physique. It is the conclusion drawn by the Protoss after analyzing the data. It is normal for Joseph to not understand, and he does not intend to disclose too much. Then, several people continued to patrol. As a veteran cavalryman, Joseph has patrolled the area of Yukon Forest countless times, so he knows the route of several people and some precautions. Under his leadership, Karen and others quickly completed the 3-pointer. BIS patrol work. Go forward about 300 meters, and you will be at the outer boundary of Yukon Forest. Joseph pointed to the front and said, there are too many beasts in the depths of the forest. For us, trespassing without authorization is undoubtedly a dead end for us, so we can take a tour of that area again and we can go back. While talking, Joseph rode forward. Wait a minute. However, at this moment, Karen suddenly spoke and pulled the rein to a stop. What's the matter, Master Karen? Joseph was taken aback. Karen looked dignified and looked forward. With the Protoss scanning function, a faint red appeared under his eyes. 200 meters in front of, there is a group of gangsters hidden. The number of gangsters is about 10, of which 7 are hiding in the lush bushes, and the 3 are holding bows and crossbows, standing high on the tree, and aiming their ready togo arrows at the bottom. There are often beasts in Yukon forest, and even bandits rarely flee here. Looking at the ambush not far away, Karen's face remained calm. His eyes flickered, he thought to himself, and said, "Today is my first day on patrol, and I will encounter an ambush. This is definitely not a coincidence, but someone deliberately revealed my whereabouts to the gang. Except for Tyler, I can't seem to suspect anyone else. What to do? The opponent has the advantage in numbers, and there are archers hidden on the trees. Once they enter their range, there is no chance of winning with the 5 of us alone." Karen's thoughts flickered, and she made a decision in a moment. "It seems that we can only retreat. Those bandits are still about 200 meters away from us. As long as the other party does not notice the abnormality, escape from the Yukon forest, it shouldn't be a problem. Master Karen." At this moment, Joseph spoke again, interrupting Karen's thoughts. Karen recovered, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "Today is the first time I went out on patrol. I am a little tired. Why not stop here? Let's return to Baifeng City." Okay." Joseph was taken aback and nodded. For the patrol of the Yukon forest, Karen is the person in charge. Although Joseph is experienced, he is only assisting Karen's deputy, so it is naturally impossible to violate his orders. Besides, today's patrol was almost over. It's not a big deal to patrol less than 300 meters. Then, Karen pulled on the reins. Turned to the direction of Northwind City, he speeded up. Joseph and the other 3 cavalry were a little surprised, but also quickly followed. At the same time, in the bushes 200 meters away. "Boss, what's the matter?" Hidden in the grass, a sackclothed gangster frowned, looked at the disappearing back of Karen and others, and asked, "They seem to have found us, do you want to catch up?" The bandit leader frowned and shook his head slightly. "There are too many beasts in the Yukon forest. Rushing to chase them is likely to cause unnecessary trouble. What's more, the opponent has 5 cavalry. Without the advantage of archers, we will definitely be harmed if we deal with them." "Then, what about the employer?" The Mai gangster hesitated. "Hey! I'm not going to die for 10 golden dragons." The bandit leader snorted coldly, with a sly expression on his face, and said, "What's more, since the other party has already paid the deposit, we are not in vain. Boss wise. Beside, the gangsters all flattered. I didn't catch up." Outside the Yukon forest, Karen and his 4 cavalrymen quickly marched forward and could leave the forest in 10 minutes. Behind, the bandits in ambush did not catch up. It seems that those gangsters are not Tyler's confidants, but some profit-driven guys. They chose to give up after discovering that they might pay a price for hunting us down. Karen thought in her heart. In front of, a spacious grass field appeared. Riding a horse to rush out of the Yukon forest, Karen breathed a sigh of relief. It is less than 10 kilometers away from Baifeng City, and there are hardly any gangsters who dare to appear in this area. Not long after, Karen and others returned to Baifeng City. The time has come to the afternoon. At dusk, the sun is setting toward the west. The streets of Baifeng City are very lively, and the pubs and golons on both sides are constantly entering and exiting. "Master Karen, let's have 2 drinks together," Joseph suggested. After patrolling in the Yukon forest for a day, several cavalrymen were a little tired, and they all planned to relax. The tavern seemed to be the best choice, and Joseph also wanted to get closer to Karen. After all, so far, the succession of Baifeng City has not been decided yet. As one of the 2 most likely successors, Karen is likely to become the lord of the Northwind City in the future. Before he fully rises, establishing a good relationship is undoubtedly an important investment for Joseph. "No, next time." Karen shook her head. "Okay," Joseph said disappointedly. Then, he and 3 other cavalry walked into the tavern beside the street. Karen turned over and jumped off his horse, walked on the street with his mount, while looking around, using the chip to record. After a short while, Karen stopped. There is a shop in front of it, selling various herbs, animal furs, and the like. Karen left the horse outside and walked straight in. "Welcome, do you need anything?" The shop owner is a middle-aged man, wearing a linen gown, with sparse hair and a little bald. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com has a commercial smile on his face. Karen didn't speak, and looked around. This shop has a small space. After entering the door, you can see the wooden shelves on both sides full of goods. The right side is stacked with furs and animal bones, while the left side is some dried herbs and plants. Protoss, turn on the scanning function, search for useful resources around. Karen ordered in his heart. Using the Protoss scanning function, he probed the shelves on both sides of the shop, looking for resources that would help him improve his physique, and immediately found 2 targets. Cereal vine. It is a vine-like plant that grows in a dark and humid environment. It is commonly found in graves and crypt areas. Raw food is highly toxic. The soup is extracted after boiling with water, which can stimulate mental growth. Red tiger bones. The ribs of male red tigers, after being ground into powder, can be strengthened by flushing with water. The effect is more effective when combined with spirits and red ring snake gall. Long-term drinking will help improve strength and physique. Karen's eyes lit up and she looked over. The first thing he noticed was that the red tiger ribs with the length of the baby's arm placed on the top shelf of the right-hand shelf had been completely air-dried over time, and the surface appeared crimson red, like a jade. "Boss, how do you sell this thing?" Karen asked. "Red tiger bone." The bald boss was a little surprised. It seemed that he didn't expect Karen to stare at the treasure of his town shop when he spoke. After thinking for a while, he said, 5 golden dragons. So expensive. Karen raised an eyebrow. The bald boss shook his head and said, "The most precious part of the red tiger is the bone. The price of a complete set of adult red tiger bones can even reach 100 golden dragons. A rib with 5 golden dragons, this is not expensive."